We are committed to creating a safe and supportive space for our guests and listeners, and to provide information and tools that will help our listeners understand, manage, and overcome trauma. We understand that the healing journey can bring up challenging emotions. Therefore, we want to warn our audience that certain episodes may contain discussions or stories that could be triggering for some individuals. The content of the podcast is for educational and informative purposes only, and we encourage you to practice self-care and discretion while listening, and to reach out to a trusted support system or professional if you feel overwhelmed and need help on your healing journey. Welcome back to Healing and Growing Hand in Hand podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Tickle, and our guest today is Marcy Langlois. I said your name right. I'm so proud of myself.
Yes, you did.
Yes. And you are going to share your story, and it's really an interesting, very interesting story, and there's so much to it. And you're going to share your incredible healing journey, and I know you have a great one. We're also going to talk about you healing from your autoimmune disease. That is a whole podcast right there. So this is going to be a really power-packed podcast, I can tell, just from your story and your healing journey, which is really powerful. So welcome to the podcast, Marcy.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so honored to be here.
Thank you. I'm honored to have you, and thank you for sharing your story, because I always like to thank my guests that, share their stories, because it isn't an easy thing. I mean, I get thanked a lot for telling my story, and I'm like, why are they thanking me? Because it's, I want to share it, but it's not always easy to tell your story and put it out there for everyone. But I know that as we share our stories, it really helps others on their healing journey as well. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's get into it. Let's just dive in. Let's hear your story, because it's a big one.
Yeah. So my story really begins the day I was born, as it does for everybody. But I came into the world with a whole bunch of special needs. I was born with a cleft lip and palate, and just so that people listening who may not know what that is, that's basically when you're born and you don't have any roof in your mouth. And the soft tissue has not formed there. And then you have a hole in your lip where the lip doesn't form. And and then behind the scenes, internally, you can have a whole range of issues, all the way from your digestive system to your heart. It can be fatal. There can be lots and lots of complications. It's like the external is pointing to what typically is going on internally. Ooh. And so the first day that I was born, I was taken away from my mom to the university hospital. And I spent the first 7 days of my life in the hospital, and they were just running tests on me to figure out, did I have any other complications? And the reason that I'm really talking about this is because this is very important. The first 90 days that we're alive, our nervous system is being wired either for safety and security or for fear and survival. And so you can imagine, as a brand new baby, I was being wired for fear and survival. Yeah. And right at the end of those 90 days, I had my first surgery to start repairing my face. And so again, right at the end of those 90 days, right, a really transformative period for the wiring of the nervous system. And this is how trauma really works, right? Trauma is embedded in the body. Trauma isn't necessarily about the experience that we've faced, but it's the way it impacts the physical being.
Correct.
And so, right, like that's so fundamental to understand, and literally changes who we are. And so, moving along, my parents were young. We didn't have much of anything at all. At times we had nothing, no running water and no electricity. My dad was an alcoholic, and things were tough and tumultuous and chaotic all of the time. And my health needs really have been a lifetime of health needs. It really didn't change. I've had over 20 surgeries. My last one was when I was 18 years old. And so I was always needing something. I was always sick. I was always at the doctor's, the orthodontist, whoever, wherever. But I always needed some sort of medical attention. And so as I went to school, I had been raised in this little community, and really a lot of my family was around. So I didn't pay a lot of attention to that I was different, right? Everybody just kind of, this is who Marcy is. And I didn't get a lot of feedback about being different.
Oh,
But
that's
when
good.
I started, yes, right?
That's
But when
refreshing.
when I started school, though, I did. Right. And the kids there didn't know me, and they started teasing me and bullying me a bit. And so that became really formative for me. I started learning at a young age that in order for me to have other people accept and like me so that I could belong, then I had to be who I thought you wanted me to be.
Yeah.
And right, I adopted that belief really early on.
Me too.
And
It's a chameleon. I became a chameleon, and I was quite proud of that.
right, right, because I thought that this is what everyone did.
Yeah.
You too?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So not so though, right? As I found out, but and really unhealthy, but very wise as a young person to do whatever I needed to do.
Right.
So I don't have any shame around it now.
Right.
But not healthy. And so then as I'm going through school, I know that I'm definitely out of the societal norm. I'm just not attracted to the boys in my class. I'm attracted to the girls. And I'm sitting in a Catholic school, and just full of shame and self-hatred.
Yeah.
Now it's like not only the way I look, the way I talk, but that we're dirt poor, now who I am, right? So I'm just like, okay, we're just going to shove all of that down, right? And if we don't deal with it, then this is never going to be a thing. And that's what I tried really all of my life. And by middle school, I started experimenting with alcohol. And by high school, I was full on drinking and started using drugs, and just really kept on that path. And the surgeries continued and intensified in high school, because as soon as you stop growing is when a lot of the reconstruction can really take place. Before that, everything is like to allow you to function, to eat, to drink, right? So as you get older, it's like, oh, I had an 11 millimeter underbite, right? My nose was pretty flat to my face. So it's what you see today is very different than the way I used to look. And so, anyway, as I'm rounding the bend, and I think, okay, I'm done with this, right? Like I got some new stuff to look forward to. I'm going to go to college, and like my life is going to start. And it was my senior year in high school. And what ended up happening, I was on my way to my after school job, and I got in a horrific car accident. And 3 people lost their lives that day.
Oh my God.
And yeah, I mean, I was 17 years old, and this man pulled out in front of me. He never saw me, and I hit his car. And based in the belief systems that I had adopted, I was responsible, right? I was responsible for what had happened, even though I wasn't. I was never found at fault. I wasn't drinking or using drugs at the time. Thank God. And it was just this very tragic set of events that unfolded. And I tried to get help, but I wasn't capable at that time. I mean, I had a lifetime of trauma that had never been addressed, and now this was like the icing on the cake. And so I didn't know how to deal with this, and neither did anyone else. My parents were very ill-equipped, and so what I did know is that drugs and alcohol worked. And so I sunk into the depths of addiction, and for the next 10 years, and just woke up every day believing that I didn't deserve to be alive, and really was hoping that I wouldn't wake up. I wanted my life to be over. And seeing how that wasn't happening, drugs and alcohol was the only thing that I could find that could soothe it. And when I turned 27, I had just met this woman a few years before, and she had a little girl. And it just became really clear to me that I was repeating the same cycle of trauma I was raised in. And I was doing to this little girl exactly what had been done to me. And it just was literally like a 2x4 side the head, right? Like I was like, she didn't ask for this. And I can't do this to her. And 10 days after I turned 27 years old, I decided to get clean and sober. And that was over 21 years ago. And I've not taken a drink or a drug since that day.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. I'm so grateful. Really, that was the beginning. Really, honestly, I thought I have arrived, right? Like I'm alcohol and drug free and, the sky is the limit. But really, I'm here to tell you that that was just the beginning of my story. What happened is when I put that down, it was masking everything else that was underneath it. And now the real work began of trying to figure out how to heal.
Right.
And what I did is the only thing I knew how to do, which was switch addictions. And I started working like a maniac. And I became so invested in my career, and I was in sales. So it's accolade driven, and the more you do, the better you are, and all the worst things for someone like me. And even though I was going to therapy and I was in a recovery program and like actively doing all of the things to heal the trauma, I wasn't ever really healing the trauma. I guess I was healing layers, but I wasn't getting underneath.
To the root.
And so, to the root. Exactly. And so what ended up happening is 3.5 years ago, I almost died. I ended up with mast cell activation syndrome and histamine intolerance, which are both autoimmune conditions. And it's basically when the nervous system is so fragmented, it starts misreading and misperceiving everything in its environment, thinking that everything is a threat.
Okay.
So food, air, your thoughts, what you smell, everything. So I had been having these strange symptoms, and they were like multifactorial and multi-system. So one day I'd have this really erratic heart rate, and one day my vision would be very askewed, and one day I would have panic so bad that I couldn't literally even sit in my chair. I thought for sure I was dying. And but none of them were lining up all on the same day. And then I started having tremors, and then I started having tremors in my brain. And I didn't tell anybody any of this was going on because I was terrified. And so what ended up happening is my body said no more, right? The body is going to keep knocking until you're ready to listen. And so I couldn't tell if my desk was moving, if my computer was moving, if I was moving. I just said, I literally can't do this anymore. And I was supposed to take a long weekend because everybody thought this was just too much stress was causing this. And again, the body said, oh, here I am, and this is what you've been ignoring. And for 40 days, I became bedridden. But the most powerful part of all of that is that, one, it was the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. 2, I stared death in the eye, which was my greatest fear. And 3 is that I learned during that time that I was so sick is that what I think and what I tell myself and how I feel based on those beliefs and thoughts determines what my body does. So my body is listening. That's right. My body's listening all the time, and it produces the chemicals to correspond with all of those things. And that's the beginning of how I started healing my body.
That is incredible. Let me ask you this. How old were you when you were diagnosed with the autoimmune? When you finally said, okay, I got to get to the root of this. How old were you?
I've been struggling with mystery symptoms and illness really for as long as I've been alive. But really it started when I was like around 10 or 11 years old. They put me on 3,500 milligrams of antibiotics a day because
Oh
they
my
didn't know what was wrong with me.
goodness.
They had no, yeah, they had no idea what was wrong with me. And they just were like, we just need to put you on this antibiotic. And I stayed on it for like a year and a half. This is before they knew what antibiotics
Yeah.
do to the rest of the body.
Yeah.
So really for my whole life, but when I quit drinking is when my body really, really started declining. And it got worse and worse, and it just kept declining,
Mm-hmm.
right? Insomnia and psoriasis all over my body and heart palpitations. And when I say insomnia, I'm talking like if I was able to sleep 3 or 4 hours in a day, that was amazing. I'm talking brutal insomnia.
God, that makes a day long. I've dealt with that. That makes a day really long. That alone will really mess with your head. It's very
That's what I was just
frustrating.
going to say, right? Mentally, it's so hard. And of course, dealing with PTSD and complex PTSD, all of that, excuse me, panic, anxiety, depression, night terrors, all of that, right? Really. So it's just been, I've been searching for answers really since I was 27 years old, like steadily. I've been everywhere and seen everyone.
The reason why I ask is there's a statistic out there, and I've had several guests fit within this and clients too. But, on average, women who are sexually abused between the ages of 13 and 17 don't share that information for 4 decades. But I have found, isn't that interesting? So these people, women, in this case, we're talking about women, suffer for 40 years before, and they get to the point kind of where you're at, where just their body just says enough. And then they finally, they're to a point where they're almost forced to have to share it. I have found that to be true, though, not just with sexually abused, just abuse, because I think what shut me down was shame, which seems silly that I would have shame.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything to deserve to be abused, but that's what I carried, and that's what kept me quiet. And, and we don't share this stuff because of that shame or whatever. I know for me, I didn't want people to know, because then they would just know that I'm just this messed up person and they wouldn't like me. And I wanted people to like me. But it's so true. And the suffering that goes on, imagine the suffering for 4 decades of what these people, women, men, even men, it's even worse. They really can't talk about it.
Yeah.
And it explains why, and which we're going to talk about a little bit about, is the autoimmune diseases. And it has been scientifically proven that people who go through, complex trauma, abuse, later on can have autoimmune diseases. The wonderful thing is, like what you're going to share, is you can be healed from those as well.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about that in your life. So you tell us what it is again that you had, because I've never heard that.
Yeah, I had 2 things going on simultaneously. I had a lot of things going on. I had 5 infections in my body that they could not get rid of.
Oh.
No matter what they did. 4 of them were viral and 1 of them was bacterial. And so no matter what we did, we couldn't get rid of it. My liver was really poor functioning.
Yeah.
And so obviously that doesn't help anything. And then I had a mast cell activation syndrome. And that is what people with COVID that were dying from COVID, that was the system. It was mast cells that were activating in their body and just going crazy. And that was what was killing people.
Okay.
So it causes like anaphylaxis, and it affects every system in the body. And then histamine intolerance is when your body just keeps making histamine because it thinks there's some sort of threat. And it just keeps making histamine, but you're not able to get rid of the histamine. And so, again, it causes anaphylaxis. So I had like hundreds and hundreds of reactions to food, to my thoughts. My own thinking would cause it. that's when that's like next level, when your own thinking is
Mm-hmm.
causing anaphylaxis.
Mm-hmm.
Or the onset of that, I should say, not anaphylaxis, but the onset of it, an
Mm-hmm.
allergic
Stress in your
reaction.
body. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's what I was contending with.
Jeez. And then they're
Yeah.
giving you all this medical treatment that's doing who knows what to your body. And it might be fixing one thing, but it's not fixing something else. So you're getting pumped with
Well,
all this stuff, right?
no, actually,
Oh.
I stopped going to a Western medicine doctor. Right after I got clean and sober, or right before is before I was 25 and I stopped going to a Western medicine doctor. Um, they wanted to operate on me again, and
Mm.
because I, all the symptoms, and they
Yeah.
didn't even really know what they were going to do.
Oh no.
And yeah, and I got off the operating table literally and went home, and I never went back to a Western medicine
Oof.
doctor. And so I've been in the naturopathic care. I have a naturopathic doctor, and thank God, because I would probably be dead without her. And so, no, I was taking a lot of supplements and stuff
Okay.
for all the things I was dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
but I was reacting to the supplements. So we
Okay.
just, yeah, had to stop all of it.
And clean out your body and start over. Um
Yes.
there oh shit, I have something we said that I heard about this morning, and then I just lost it. It was really interesting about um or how our body. I was watching this morning early in the morning because I couldn't sleep this morning. My neck was bothering me, and I was watching the podcast with Theo Vaughn and Gabor Mate. I say his name wrong. Gabor
Yep.
Mate, and it was really interesting. And he was starting to touch on the whole autoimmune disease and being able to that we can actually heal it, and how, I mean, the most common ones are MS and rheumatoid arthritis. Those are the more common autoimmune disease that are happening. But, he talks about getting to the root of what is causing it. And that's the thing that when you were talking about Western medicine, that's what it was. He was talking about how Western medicine misses out so much, especially in this area, because if doctors in Western medicine would even simply ask and find out your history, if they would have known your history and they
Mm-hmm.
understood trauma, they would go, that would have given them a heads up to, okay, wait a minute, before we like stick you on the operating table or pump you full of medicine, like let's get to this first. Let's address
Right.
the trauma first and get to the root of that and get that addressed first. And then let's address the physical symptoms that are left, if there are any left.
That's right. Yes, absolutely. That's like when you go to a naturopathic doctor, that's what you do. Like the intake form is like 15 pages,
Right.
and you have to write out like your whole trauma history and
Right.
all, like, yeah, exactly. Yes, because they need, in order to treat the whole of who you are, they
Right.
have to know who that is.
Right. They have to know what you are spiritually and physically and emotionally. They need to know your history. And
That's
I
right.
thought, God, that is so true. And it's not the doctor's fault. They're not trained for that. They're not trained for that. They're trained
That's right.
for diagnosing what's going on with you and handing you a prescription, and hoping that that works. But I got one too.
Sorry.
That's okay. But
Okay.
it's interesting. So tell us how you were able to clear up this autoimmune disease, and like what's that story like? What were the steps that you took to overcome your autoimmune disease, because this is really important.
Yeah, so it's a deal, right? Like it's a lot of work.
It is, yeah.
It's yeah, it's not like taking a pill.
No.
That's why most people don't want to do it. And I understand. So so as I was saying, like when I was laying in bed, I got so clear that what we think and how we feel determines what happens in our body. So like for example, if I started getting worked up about, oh my God, I'm never going to go back to my career. Like I
Yeah.
have a mortgage banking business. Like what's going to happen to us financially, what's going to happen to my staff, my client, right? Like the whole thing. As soon as I would start doing that, the tremors would increase in my body, like, exponentially. And then what I realized is like, if I could calm down and just be in the moment and just be fully present with myself, that they wouldn't go away. But it was like, okay, this, like, I can handle this. This is still terrifying, but I can handle it. Right. And so then I was like, well, wait a minute. What if I just tell myself, like, I'm going to be okay. Right. Like, everything's going to be okay. And I stay focused on that, like on the hope and the positivity, then it's like, oh, I think things are feeling even a little better, right? Like, so as all of these like guess and check methods, I mean, I have nothing else to do. I'm bedridden,
Right?
right?
It's kind of a blessing in
There's
disguise, right?
is the best thing that ever happened to me. It's the best thing that ever happened. And I just so it started there. And I don't know, are you familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza's work?
No. What's the name? Joe?
Joe Dispenza?
No.
Oh, you'll love him. So he's one of the teachers that I really followed, and I've been following him for years and years. I've always been a spiritual seeker that long for my whole life, really. I've always been fascinated about what I can't see or touch, and because I know it's there, because I can
Yeah.
feel it, but I just
Right.
can't see it or touch it, right?
Right.
And so he's been one of the primary people that I really listened a lot to, but also like Michael Singer, and I listened to Dr. Kim Duramo and other people. And what they kept saying is that you can heal your body, right? You can heal your body. And for years and years, I've been trying to heal my body. But what I didn't understand then that I get so clearly today is that I can't be the same person that I used to be.
Yes.
That same person is the traumatized person living in survival, living
Yeah.
in fear, right? That person is sick. And that person is
Yeah.
always going to stay sick because the body operates in frequency. And when you're living in survival and fear, and stress, then the frequency stays low in the body. In order for the body to be in optimal health, you need to be operating upwards of 60 megahertz. And I don't know exactly what the number is, but the frequency cannot be low. And so, in order to create health in the body, you have to raise the frequency. And it starts with what we think and what we believe and how we feel. And then you have to learn how to regulate the nervous system so that you can stay out of survival and fear,
Correct.
right? And then you have to maintain the higher level of frequency. And that's how you heal yourself. And so I did that through meditating for hours and hours every single day, literally like 3, 4, 5 hours a day. I would meditate. Um, I would spend time on my deck just watching the clouds go by, which is kind of like active meditation.
Yeah.
What you're aiming for specifically to heal the body is you have to stop the brain and to be able to access the autonomic nervous system, because the only job of the autonomic nervous system is to heal the body. That's it. It's like the trash collector in the body. It's like, oh, this doesn't belong here, this doesn't belong here. But the only way you can access the autonomic nervous system is to get in a place of rest and digest. You have to activate the parasympathetic state. So that's why I couldn't be the same nutcase. Like, I'd read all these books and study all this stuff and take all these classes. And for an hour or two every day, at the end of my day, I was in this great space. But the other 14 hours of the day that I was awake, I was living in stress and survival and fear.
Right.
And that's why I could never heal. Even though I thought I was working so hard at it, I was always in direct opposition with my own self.
Yes. Yeah. I can relate to that because I lived most of my adult life living in survival mode. And when I look back on it, the one thing I will tell you is I was exhausted all the time. And I used to smoke cigarettes, right? So I thought, oh, it's the cigarettes. Well, then I quit smoking. I mean, I quit smoking, what, 30 plus years ago. And I was still tired.
Awesome.
And I tell the story too. This is interesting too. I tell the story too that my ex-husband would call me on my cell phone, right? And I'm sitting here and I pick up my cell phone and he'd say, "Did you just run to the phone?" And I said, "No, why?" "Because you're breathing really hard." And I thought that was the
That's so
oddest
normal.
thing, right? And he said that to
Yeah.
me several times. And I'm like, that's so bizarre. And it makes complete sense now when I look back on it. I mean, think about it. I was constantly in a state of fear, constantly expecting something to happen all the time. So I was ready for a fight or a flight. And so
Mhm.
imagine what that does to our adrenal glands when we're constantly in that state. And it was normal to me because I had lived that all my life. So I didn't know what it was like not to live like that. And it was
Right.
part of what caused me, and by God's grace, I don't have an autoimmune disease. I probably should. But what caused me to get my attention is I started putting this together and I got tired of feeling like crap all the time. I just got tired of
Mhm.
it. And I got tired of the drama and the chaos that was constantly going on. Even though I was part of the problem, I got tired of it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then that transition, which I'm sure you can relate to, of going from chaos to calm, that transition's a little challenging. It's hard.
It's very hard.
It's because your
Yes.
normal is chaos and drama, and you're trying to get away from it. And there's something about that chaos and drama that is kind of causes a drive in you. When I think back on that, like it caused kind of a weird drive in me, and maybe that's what
Mhm.
motivated me. But I got tired of it.
Mhm.
I got tired of it, and it's only by the grace of God. Like I said, I don't have an autoimmune disease. However, I do have a lot of physical stuff from walking around. And I know the reason why I was breathing the way I was is because I was constantly tight. I was constantly, I even today, I have to catch myself because my body automatically wants to go into this tight mode, and tighten up on me. And I have to go, no, and take a deep breath. And why am I tightening up? What's causing me to tighten up right now? And be aware of it. But because I walked around just this tight bundle of nerves, I tore things. I tore up so many things in my body
Aw.
because of it. So I didn't get an autoimmune disease, but that's what I got because I was walking around always tense, always tight, and I was always active.
Oh, shoot. Yep. Bad combination, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no
And I didn't do
flexibility.
things half-heartedly. Like I did cardio
Right.
kickboxing and that was my stress reliever. And believe me, I put my all into it. I tore stuff up
Right.
doing that too. But it just I mean, you keep mentioning like, and I love that you're mentioning that when you were in bed and you were thinking, you were paying attention to your thoughts and you were paying
Mhm.
attention to what those thoughts were doing to your body. And
Yeah.
we get to a point where we disconnect as a child so we don't feel that stuff. And we need to reconnect because we need to listen to our bodies. Our bodies are telling us a message and we need to listen to that message.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, I was really scared of being sick, especially because my condition just kept
Yeah.
deteriorating over the years. And I kept feeling like this isn't going to have a good ending for me anywhere. And you can ask my wife. I literally spent 20 years researching, trying to heal myself. I mean, I've spent $500,000.
Oh
I've
yeah.
been to doctors, naturopaths, acupuncturists, energy workers. I've tried every single modality that I could ever find. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
literally, I have looked high and low, and lo and behold, the thing is that we are our own healer. The problem is that the trauma literally is in the body, and it's changed the energy of the body.
Right.
In order for the body to work correctly, the energy has to flow correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So when we have these experiences, they get literally like stuck like paint on the wall inside the body, which then causes the energy now to have to go like this.
Yeah.
So
Causes blocks.
now the Yes, exactly. So now the messaging from the brain to the rest of the body, trying to tell the body what to do, is like, hey, you need to digest the food, right? The stomach is now hearing, digest the food when you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it's that it's that simple, but also that technical. Like,
Yeah.
right? And so you think about that over time, or like for you, like the holding in your body, those holding patterns in your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what a lot of people don't understand is that 95% of every thought that you think today is the same thought you thought yesterday and the same thought you thought 10 years ago, because it all comes from our subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind is programmed in the first 7 years that we're alive. And so all of the childhood trauma, that's why childhood trauma in particular is very different than other kinds of trauma, because it impacts us in a way that most people don't understand. And what happens is that it's kind of like right now I have probably, I don't know, like 10 tabs open on my computer while we're doing this interview, right? All those tabs are still running. Even though
Mm-hmm.
I don't have them open, they're still running, right?
Right.
Well, that's the same thing that's happening for all of us. So if my program is fear, survival, worry, concern, stress, all of the messaging that was going on in my body all of my life was, you've got to watch out for this. Oh my God, this could happen. What if that
Mm-hmm.
happens? If that
Mm-hmm.
happens, then you could do X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
right? It was always planning and plotting,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And until I got really, really sick, I didn't know those were the thoughts that were running through my head. And all my clients that I work with, this is exactly the same truth for
Mm-hmm.
them too.
Yeah.
So I have this whole process that I take people through. It's just the process I did, right? To become aware of my thoughts, because then you have to change that thinking. Like the
Correct.
body's not going to change until you stop the computer from sending the message,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Exactly. I know, because if you think about it, if I sit here and I think about, something negative that's going on in my life, if I focus on that, my body is going to feel it. I mean, and I used to, I know
Yes.
what you're saying, because I used to just go through life and I just let the thoughts go through. It wasn't until just few years ago that I realized I was an overthinker. But if I start thinking
Mhm.
about something happy, and then you feel your body. Once somebody said this, and it's so true. When you're in a grateful state, you're not going to be unhappy.
It's impossible.
It's impossible to be unhappy when you are vocally saying, like, I am grateful for my life. I am grateful for my husband. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for, my dogs and whatever. When you
Yeah.
start, because that's the thing that snapped me out of it. Because that was the thing that worked for me is to stop that crazy overthinking that I would do. Is I would stop and I go, wait a minute. Because of course the overthinking is negative. And I would just stop and I would
Yeah.
just, I actually did a test one day because I was driving into work and it was a bad situation at work. And I had been living this work situation for a while. So on the way to work, I was all the way, it was over an hour drive, just going over in my head what the day was going to be like and going over all the
Oh,
negative stuff in my head, right? So by the time I
oh.
pulled into the parking lot, I was miserable. I was,
Mhm.
and I hadn't even started my work day.
Mhm.
When I pulled into the parking lot, I know it was God. And he told me, I want you to stand up straight. I want you to walk into that office and I want you to spend time being grateful and telling me what you're thankful for. And so it was a walk from the parking garage, probably 5 minutes up to my desk. And I did. I literally, and I was muttering it under my breath, and nobody was around, thank goodness. But I started going through and saying that I'm thankful for this job. I'm thankful that I had this car to drive me to work, and just whatever was coming to my head. And by the time I sat down in my seat, I was a completely different person.
Isn't that amazing?
It
It's
was a
like
true
so
test.
crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. It's that simple,
It
but
really is.
also that hard,
It is.
right?
Yeah, it is. And of course, that was a big aha moment for me, right? I knew that stuff, but I hadn't applied that stuff in my life. And that was I mean, I literally was like, it was almost like an out of body experience walking through that, and made me so aware of that. And I have used that in my life. And it's taken, it took years, because my my healing took years, because I didn't have a lot of stuff
Me
that they
too.
have now, thank God. But that showed me how powerful my thoughts were. And
Yeah.
that practice is what gets me out of that. If I find myself getting down in the dumps, then that's exactly what I do. I just start going down my grateful list, and I've got a lot to be grateful for.
Oh, I love that. One thing I found in my journey is so powerful is not just to say that I'm grateful, but to feel
Yeah.
grateful,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And the
it's like
grateful that makes me
gratitude
cry.
on steroids. Yes. Yes, exactly.
I'd be a big bawling baby when I get into my real grateful moods. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where I can't even say them because I'm just, I'm so touched by it.
Yeah, absolutely. Where everything feels like it's just amazing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing that could be wrong. It's just all exactly the way it's supposed to be.
Exactly. So today,
Yeah.
with your autoimmune disease that you don't have anymore, correct?
Yeah,
Or yeah,
that's
so
right.
it's gone, right? It's you no longer have it. You're taking your supplements, and you have no more symptoms. Everything is back to is normal.
Actually, I don't take any supplements. And yeah, I mean, if you saw the cupboard, I used to, just to give you an idea, I would spend about $3,000 a month on supplements.
I believe it.
And I don't take any supplements anymore. I was on thyroid medication. I don't take thyroid medication.
Mm,
I've had, right? I healed my
I'm on thyroid
thyroid.
medication.
Yeah, I healed my thyroid, even though they
Ooh.
told me that's impossible. And I also, yeah, and all my blood work shows that I don't have any viruses. I have no infections in my body. Um, yeah,
All
here I
balanced.
am, all
So you
balanced.
get the trauma out, and look what happens.
That's what happens, right? And the trauma is still like, I don't want to tell anybody that it's not still a work in progress because
Oh
it
yeah,
is,
yeah.
right? Like, as you know, it's like, yes, my body is responding beautifully and it's amazing. But yeah, I still get triggered. I still
Mm-hmm.
have things that I have to work through and deal with. But the difference is today is that I'm equipped.
Yeah,
I know how to do that. And I don't shame myself about it
yeah.
because
That's awesome.
it's just not helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no shame in that, and and we should be proud of the fact that we can work on this and that we can work through the trauma. And the thing that I was going to say too is,
Mm.
as when you're in your place or in my place where you've worked through so much of your healing, that yes, we're on a healing journey until we take our last breath. But what we are able to do is we're able to manage that rather than it managing us. And when we
Yes.
are triggered, we catch ourselves much quicker and we work through it much quicker. And like I say, I don't have to go back and clean up messes that I made during my trigger. I hated that. I hated that. Oh,
Yeah.
for a long time I didn't clean up messes. And then when I started realizing, okay, I need to start cleaning up my messes, that's not a fun thing to do. But you're able to
No.
manage that. You catch when something triggers you, and then you're able to sit there and go, okay, wait, why did that trigger me? And get to the root of it so that you're not triggered again.
That's right. That's right. And just also, as you're saying, is like, it used to be that 99% of my life was living in a triggered state. I
Yeah.
mean, literally, the
Yep.
entire world triggered me
Yes.
constantly.
Yep.
And today, it's like I live my life 99% of the time not triggered, right?
Yes. In
It's
peace.
like it's literally like this, yeah, it's like this complete inverse thing
Mm-hmm.
that happened, and now that's how I live my life, and it's yeah, it is. It's this amazing sense of peace and
It's
tranquility
it's
happening to me.
really interesting too that we were talking about earlier. We lived in chaos and drama, and then that transition into how we live now, which is peaceful and calm. And like our home is our sanctuary, and we do what we can to keep it that way. So it's for us and anybody that walks in. But then when you have something that happens that causes chaos, it's so uncomfortable. Like before we lived that, we didn't really feel it because we weren't paying attention. But now when it
Right.
happens, it's like, ooh, how can I get out of this situation? Ooh, I don't like this chaos. I don't like, and you do what but you're, again, you're like you were saying, you're equipped so that you can work through it. So it doesn't overpower you and overtake you. That's the thing that
That's right.
I used to hate, is just feeling so helpless. Like, I don't know how to stop this train. Like, it's coming through no matter what I do. But now we're able to manage it. And it still has an effect. It's interesting how it feels though, because when you stop and think about, God, that's how I felt all the time.
Oh, I know. I can relate 100%. As soon as I see any drama on the horizon, I'm out. I'm right. Like
Me
I
too.
am just like, I'm not willing to compromise my peace and serenity
Mm-mm.
today for anyone or anything, right? It's
Mm-mm.
like if you're not in the space that you want to be doing your own work, then I don't really want to participate in that. Like I'm here to
Yeah.
hold space for you, but I'm not getting in there with you.
Right.
I'm
Right. And I'm not going to enable
yeah,
you either. I'm not,
no.
I have seen people that have put themselves in that position if they think they're helping people and they're actually enabling them. And I won't do that either. But yeah,
Mm.
I stay away from the drama. I don't cause it anymore. I stay away from it. If I do get pulled in, and sometimes that does happen, I know how to get things calmed down and show people how to do this calmly and not in the chaos
Yeah.
and drama. And it's so empowering. I mean, I went from, and I think you probably feel the same way, I went from a completely helpless state to a hopeful state of empowerment and being able to manage this stuff, and it's not overtaking me anymore. That's what I didn't like.
Yeah. Totally. I can relate 100%. Good for you. Nice
Yeah.
work.
Yeah,
Really.
I know. Same to you. I mean, it's been a long journey and it hasn't been easy, but I wouldn't trade it for the world, really, honestly. Where I'm at
I
today. And don't you agree that this life is for everyone?
Yes.
You and I aren't
Yes. That's why
special, right?
no, nope, not at all. That's why I'm here today, because I think it's so important to tell people that we didn't draw a special number or something like that. I believe everybody can have this, but
Yeah.
you have to want to do the work. You
Yeah.
have to show up for yourself in a way you never have.
Let me ask you this question. I don't know if you have the answer, but I want your take on it. Why do you think that there are people that are so afraid of healing that they don't? Like, there's something that holds them back, right? And you're just like, all you got to do, just take this one step, and they won't do it. What is that? What do you think that is?
I think that for those people, it is really just nervous system dysregulation, a sense of feeling so unsafe that they just can't fathom it. Like they don't know, how
Yeah.
to move forward through that. But I think it's totally nervous system dysregulation and
Okay.
a lack of attachment.
Yeah, because for me, I always, I started my journey at 19, I realizing that I had been abused, and I knew I didn't like the way I felt inside. I didn't realize at the time it was pain. I didn't understand that and
Right?
what was going on. I just knew I didn't like the way I felt, and I was desperately searching for a way to get away from it. And so I've always sought after to try, I wasn't always successful, but I always sought after trying to improve myself, trying to make things better. But I have had people in my life who just, they're, to this day, they are still the same person. They refuse to take that first step. And I've never understood it, but it makes sense, because there's some things that I obviously haven't dealt with yet, I think, and fear overtakes me. And I'm like, no, I don't want to deal with that right now. So I get that part of it, but I just know
Yeah.
I didn't like the way I felt and I wanted to get away from it. So that's what
Yeah.
motivated me.
Yeah, same. I mean, once I got clean and sober, the drugs and alcohol were masking all that for
Yeah.
me. But once I got clean and sober and I started going to therapy, I was like, yeah, this is my thing. And I've never stopped, like in terms of seeking support or help
Mm-hmm.
or a new modality or whatever it is, I have always been working towards improving myself, because why do I want to feel like that?
I know.
You know?
And then,
Oh,
bless your heart, now you're helping others, right? And you're taking them
yeah.
through this, and and it's a great thing. I mean, there's nothing better than seeing someone, on their healing journey. It's such a beautiful thing, whether I'm helping them or someone else is, I don't care. They're on their healing journey. I love witnessing that. It's beautiful.
Agreed. Agreed. I don't, yeah, because not everybody can hear the message from someone, it
Yeah.
takes all sorts of different people to be able to hear whatever they need to hear and say a way that, you would say it compared to how I say it, it's like,
Yeah.
it just takes whatever it takes. So
Yeah.
yeah, who's ever doing the work, my hat is always off to them. I mean, my hat's
Absolutely.
off to all people, but if you're in there and you're in the trench, I really have so much respect and admiration for your process.
Absolutely. And just hang in there, because it will get better. I promise. I promise. Just hang in there. Keep taking those steps. Even if they're baby steps, it's okay. If they're baby steps, it's moving forward, and that's okay. So
That's
yeah,
right. That's right.
absolutely. So if our audience wanted to reach out to you, how could they connect with you?
Yeah, so you'll put everything in the show notes, obviously,
Yes.
because my last name can trip people up. And I believe I've given you a link where people can contact me if they'd like to set up a one-on-one call. If
Yes.
they're ready to change their life, they're ready to take the steps, they've been everywhere potentially, and they can't find a solution. Those are my people that are still struggling. And
Mm-hmm.
so looking in the show notes is the best place, but or you can go to my website at marcylanglois.com and
Excellent.
everything is there.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have all that information for the listeners. And then let me ask you one last question. What do you want to
Sure.
leave our listeners with?
Oh, always a message of hope. Always a message of hope. As I said earlier in the interview, there was a good 10-year stretch that every day I was hoping not to wake up.
Yeah.
And, 10 years is a long time to feel like that. And I know, as you said, people go 4 decades without saying, their pain. So if you're one of those people that's, carrying the pain, or you're in the middle of your work and it feels impossible or impassable, just know, hang on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just hang on and don't give up. And if we don't give up, then something eventually will shift. And that's my story. It's been your story,
Yeah.
right? All the people that I work with, it's the same. And so in the world, it can feel really dark and you can feel really alone. But giving up isn't an option today,
Mm-mm.
right? Because there is hope on the other side of this thing.
Yeah. Very well said. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for being a guest and sharing your story and the
Yeah.
story of hope. And I love that you've healed yourself from your autoimmune disease. And I will always share those stories, because there's a lot of hope in that, because there's so much mystery behind those, and now it's being unveiled. So thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure and honor.
Yes, I agree.